Okay, the headlines have been screaming. Here's a typical example from NBC. Wisconsin Supreme Court rules in favor of Chrystul Kizer, allowing sex trafficking defense in homicide trial. Wrong. Let's take a look at some more headlines. Sex trafficking victim who allegedly killed abuser can claim self-defense. Wisconsin Supreme Court rules that sex trafficking can be argued as defense. Madame Noir says, sex trafficking victim Chrystul Kizer granted immunity in murder case. Really? Wow. We could scroll down some more here. Chrystul Kizer case. Sex trafficking can be used as defense. Here's JS Online, who never gets anything right. Court rules Chrystul Kizer can raise sex trafficking victim defense. What's wrong with these headlines? Well, they kind of screwed up. And they're setting up a lot of Chrystul Kizer supporters or people who are going to end up supporting her for a big letdown, possibly. Hello out there. I am trying to get through.
With his powerful brainwaves cradled in the warmth of reasoning, it's time for Johnny Walker Dread to straighten you out on a thing or two. Emanating all the way from exciting Las Vegas, Oklahoma, it's the Johnny Walker Dread Show.
All right, so here is the decision by the Supreme Court of Wisconsin. This just came out a few days ago. Let's read it. This is State of Wisconsin versus Chrystul Kizer. And I'm going to scan on down here. A lot of muckety muck here we don't care about. And it says right up front, page 1, we do not, and may I emphasize the word not here, we do not decide whether Kizer may rely on this defense at trial. So what's the deal here? Well, she went down and killed a man, took an Uber down to his house, about a 45-minute drive, and partied with him for about half a day and then shot him while he was sitting in his chair. Of course, the guy is a real scumbag. His name was Randall Volar III, but I've already gone over this case many times on my channel. If you're not familiar with Chrystul Kizer's case, I would suggest you read up on it. But the issue here was, if she was sexually trafficked, can she claim an affirmative defense if she can show that her shooting of Randall Volar was a direct result of the sexual trafficking? Well, the Supreme Court of Wisconsin basically just defined what is meant by direct result. That's pretty much all they did. Obviously, defined it in a way that's favorable to her. But under no circumstances did they say that she can use this affirmative defense. It even says here, instead, we decide 2 general questions regarding the interpretation of this statute for affirmative defense and the scope of the defense. First, what does it mean for an offense to be committed as a direct result of the violation of the human trafficking statutes? And second, is this statute a complete defense to first-degree intentional homicide, or does it merely mitigate a first-degree conviction to a second-degree one? I'm not going to worry about that second issue there. I'm going to talk about the first one, direct result. What the Wisconsin State Supreme Court has done is to legalize vigilante justice. Okay, let's read on. We hold that an offense is committed as a direct result of a violation of the human trafficking statutes if there is a logical causal connection between the offense and the trafficking such that the offense is not the result in significant part of other events, circumstances, or considerations apart from the trafficking violation. We also hold that 939.46 1M is a complete defense to first-degree intentional homicide. So if she can get off on this, she gets off completely. They can't convict her of something lesser. Accordingly, we affirm the Court of Appeals decision. Okay, so she tried this affirmative defense early on, and the circuit court judge said, nope. It was never meant to cover murder. She appealed it, and the Circuit Court of Appeals ruled in her favor. Well, that kind of set off the prosecution, who was, by the way, Mike Gravely. And so they appealed to the Wisconsin State Supreme Court, and the State Supreme Court has ruled in the Circuit Court of Appeals' favor. It states here, the Court of Appeals held that when determining whether to instruct a jury on the defense, circuit courts should consider whether there is some evidence that the victim's offense arises relatively immediately from the trafficking violation of which the victim is a victim, is motivated primarily by the trafficking violation, is a logical and reasonably foreseeable consequence of that violation, and is not in significant part caused by events, circumstances, or other considerations other than that violation. Now, that's like 5 of those stipulations, right? And what that means is that if the judge decides that she has not presented evidence to substantiate those 5 claims, he would not put in the jury instructions language that would allow her to use this affirmative defense. So what happened is that the state Supreme Court got a hold of this, and they decided, you know what? Most of these are not necessary. We'll see that in a moment. It says here, and I don't know how everybody missed this. We do not decide, however, whether Kizer is entitled to a jury instruction on this defense at trial as to some or all of the charges against her. Both parties acknowledge that regardless of how we interpret the defense in this section of the law, it will be available to Kizer at trial only if she puts forth some evidence to support its application. And who gets to be the judge of that? The judge. So Judge Wilkie, who is presiding over this, who's the one, by the way, that threw out her affirmative defense in the first place, is going to be the one that decides whether the jury is going to be hearing the affirmative defense. Now, obviously, if he rules against her, she will appeal it. And the state Supreme Court might come back in and say, I'm sorry, but she did meet the burden, and therefore it has to go back to trial. So we go on here. It says, if she puts forth such evidence, the burden will be on the state to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defense does not apply. It's just like self-defense in that case. By the way, she is not claiming self-defense. No, she's not claiming self-defense. She's claiming an affirmative defense, of which self-defense is one type, centered on human trafficking. And what it states here is that if the judge decides that she has presented some evidence to claim this affirmative defense, then it's now on the state to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that her claim is false. Let's read on. We first analyze what it means for an offense to be committed as a direct result of the violation of the human trafficking statutes. Now, I highlighted this just to kind of give you the structure of this document. That's the first thing they're talking about is, what does direct result mean? And of course, they go through a lot of stuff here. Blah, 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 blah. Kizer largely adopts the Court of Appeals' view that an offense is committed as a direct result of the violation of the human trafficking statutes when it, 1, arises relatively immediately from the trafficking violation of which the victim is a victim, 2, is motivated primarily by the trafficking violation, 3, is a logical and reasonably foreseeable consequence of that violation, and 4, is not in significant part caused by events, circumstances, or considerations other than that violation. So this is what the appeals court, the lower appeals court, if you want to call it that, they decided. And Kizer was fighting for this, and so she got it. 4 stipulations. Okay, and these stipulations are going to be tough for her to meet. So what did the prosecution do? Well, they appealed the Circuit Court of Appeals' decision, and it went to the state Supreme Court. Guess what the Wisconsin State Supreme Court did? We're going to find out here in just a second. Based on the above dictionary definitions of direct and result, the ordinary usage of the phrase direct result and the language of this statute, we conclude that an offense is committed as a direct result of the violation of the human trafficking statutes if there is a logical causal connection between the offense and the trafficking, such that the offense is not the result, in significant part, of other events, circumstances, or considerations apart from the trafficking violation. Additionally, we emphasize that the offense need not be a foreseeable result of the trafficking violation and need not proceed relatively immediately from the trafficking violation. In other words, they took the 4 stipulations that Chrystul Kizer was relying on in the Circuit Court of Appeals' decision, and they threw out 2 of them. Now it's going to be easier for her to get off. In this respect, we disagree with the Circuit Court of Appeals' decision, which interpreted this statute to apply when an offense arises relatively immediately from and is a logical and reasonably foreseeable consequence of the trafficking violation. Those 2 stipulations, they threw them out. She does not have to show that anymore. Unlike many crimes, which occur at discrete points in time, human trafficking can trap victims in a cycle of seemingly inescapable abuse that can continue for months or even years. So this is why they threw out the immediacy part of the Circuit Court of Appeals' decision. However, let's think about this a little bit. Domestic violence also suffers from this condition, as does child abuse. So, have we now started opening the law to allow revenge killings between spouses and between kids and their parents? For that reason, even an offense that is unforeseeable or that does not occur immediately after a trafficking offense is committed can be a direct result of the trafficking offense, so long as there is still the necessary logical connection between the offense and the trafficking. But an offense may be a direct result of a trafficking offense even if there are other causes at play, so long as the offense is not the result in significant part of other events, circumstances, or considerations apart from the trafficking violation. So I have a question for you. Let's suppose that you're a trafficking victim. This dude has been selling you on the street, and you give him his money. He's a pimp, okay, and you're a prostitute. And you don't like being a prostitute, and so you develop a rage against this person and you want to kill him. Now, you sneak up on him at some time and you shoot him in the back of the head. All right. When you get taken into custody, the police discover that you have a bus ticket to Los Angeles, assuming you don't already live there, in your pocket. And you could have left for out of town the very next day if you had wanted. In other words, you could have escaped. You could have called the police, and you could have got on a Greyhound and traveled halfway across the country and never seen that guy again. But you decided before you left, you wanted to get even with him for the sex trafficking that you endured. Does this protect you? Let's talk about that a little bit later. It says here, it does not require, however, that the victim's offense may be the result of only the trafficking offense, or that the victim be forced to commit the offense, as the state puts it, as part of or in furtherance of the underlying trafficking violation. So if you're taking revenge on somebody for trafficking you, is your revenge a direct result of the trafficking? I see nothing here that would say no. It goes on, committed as a direct result of the violation of the human trafficking statutes in this statute does not require that the trafficker, your pimp, be aware of the offense, or that it occur at the trafficker's behest in furtherance of the trafficking violations. So other interpretations of this law required that you were breaking the law because your pimp was coercing you to do so. Here, the pimp doesn't even have to know about it. You walk up behind him. I mean, he obviously doesn't want you shooting him in the back of the head, right? And he certainly didn't set you out to do it. It simply requires that the offense occur as a direct result of the violation of the trafficking statutes. It looks to me that we have just legalized vigilantism. This is revenge killing. We agree with the state that the application of this statute requires more than the fact that a crime was committed by a trafficking victim, but our interpretation already addresses that concern. One necessary element of the defense is, of course, that the defendant be a victim of a violation of the human trafficking statutes. But this section also requires that the offense be committed as a direct result of the violation of the trafficking statutes. And as we have interpreted that requirement, it is not enough to say simply that because the defendant is a victim of human trafficking, any offense they commit subsequently must be a direct result of the trafficking. This is a straw man argument. I can't imagine anybody putting forth this interpretation of the human trafficking law. The offense must bear a logical causal connection to the underlying trafficking offense. It must be a direct result of the trafficking. Moreover, the same threshold applies to 939-46-1M as to other affirmative defenses. The defendant must produce some evidence on which a reasonable jury could find that the defense applies. Thus, our interpretation does not create the kind of blanket immunity for victims of human trafficking that the state fears. I don't recall the state making that argument. Whatever the case, it's a bad argument. I mean, they certainly weren't going to fall for that one. So, in conclusion, we hold that an offense is committed as a direct result of the violation of the human trafficking statutes if there is a logical, causal connection between the offense and the trafficking such that the offense is not the result in significant part of other events, circumstances, or considerations apart from the trafficking violation. In other words, all they did was clarify what direct result means. They did not say that she can use the affirmative defense. All you mainstream media people out there, quit saying this. They didn't say that. They said that she might be able to if she can produce some evidence that blah, blah, blah. This interpretation of direct result holds. And who gets to decide that? The judge does. So, again, the headlines have it wrong. They are not allowing sex trafficking defense in a homicide trial. They're not making that claim. They're just saying that she might be able to use it if she can show that her killing of Randall Volar was a direct result of the human trafficking. So how is she going to do that? Well, she's going to have to take the stand, I'm afraid. They need some evidence, and as far as I can tell, her taking the stand is the only way they're going to get it. And of course, when she takes the stand, she's going up against Mike Gravely. He's no slouch. This is not Binger we're talking about. Mike Gravely is serious business when it comes to prosecution. She's in a lot of trouble, in my opinion. Like my video and subscribe to my channel.